Have you ever had the strange feeling of looking back and realizing that the most painful part of your story was not what went wrong, but what you did not even try? Sometimes, regret does not come in the form of a scandal. It does not arrive screaming. It appears in silence, when you are alone, when you see someone living something that you wanted to live, when you remember an opportunity that seemed small at the time, but that today seems enormous. And maybe this is the cruelest part of inaction. It almost never seems dangerous at the beginning. It seems like comfort. It seems like prudence. It seems like I will see it later. It seems like I am not ready yet. It seems like it is not the right moment. But time has a brutal way of revealing the price of the choices that were postponed. Because there are two types of pain. The pain of trying and failing, which is usually intense, visible, and immediate. And the pain of not trying, which is usually silent, invisible, and cumulative. The first one passes. The second one grows inside the mind, because it comes accompanied by a question that can chase someone for years. What if I had done it? In this video, you will understand the 10 hidden costs of inaction, not only as a motivational idea, but as a real psychological process which affects your identity, your self-esteem, your courage, and even the way you see the future. And stay until the end, because the last cost may be the heaviest of all. It does not only steal opportunities, it can steal the person you could have become. The first cost of inaction is that it transforms possibilities into ghosts. When you act, even if the result is bad, the story gains an answer. You tried, discovered, learned, corrected, or simply understood that that path was not for you. But when you do not act, the story remains open. It does not end. It becomes a kind of mental ghost. That conversation that you did not have, that project that you did not start, that change that you postponed, that chance that you let pass. All of this continues existing inside your head, not as reality, but as interrupted possibility. And interrupted possibilities have a strange power. They seem better with time. The mind begins to fill the empty spaces with idealized versions. You imagine that maybe it would have worked, that maybe your life would be different, that maybe a single decision would have changed everything. And even if this is not totally true, the emotional sensation can be very strong. The curious thing is that the human mind suffers a lot with incomplete stories. When something remains without conclusion, the brain tends to return to it repeatedly, trying to find meaning. That is why many people can overcome a clear failure better than an opportunity never tested. Failure closes a cycle. Inaction leaves a door half open forever. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to face this door. Because it no longer represents only an old choice. It begins to represent a version of you that got stuck in the past. The second cost of inaction is that it creates a false feeling of safety. At the moment when you avoid acting, you feel relief. You do not need to expose yourself. You do not need to take risks. You do not need to deal with judgment, rejection, effort, or failure. It seems like an emotional victory. You escape discomfort. But this relief is dangerous because it teaches the brain to repeat the same pattern. Every time an important situation causes fear, anxiety, or doubt, the mind learns, if I run away, I feel better. And so inaction becomes a habit. The problem is that running away from discomfort does not eliminate the cost. It only changes the type of pain. You avoid immediate pain, but by future pain. You avoid the fear of trying, but accumulate the frustration of not having tried. You avoid the risk of exposure, but strengthen the feeling of incapacity. It is as if inaction were an emotional loan. At the beginning, it gives you peace, but later it charges interest. And this interest comes in the form of regret, low self-esteem, feeling of delay, and that impression that other people are living while you are only watching. The third cost of inaction is that it weakens confidence in yourself. Confidence is not born only from positive phrases. It is born mainly from evidence. You trust yourself more when you see that you can act, even with fear. When you realize that you can fulfill small promises. When you prove to yourself that you are capable of facing discomforts. But every time you know what you need to do and do not do it, a small crack appears in your relationship with yourself. Maybe nobody sees it. Maybe nobody charges you. Maybe nobody notices that you gave up before starting. But you notice. A part of you records that. And little by little, the mind begins to create a silent narrative. I always postpone. I never finish. I do not have courage. I am not this type of person. This narrative is dangerous because it becomes identity. You stop thinking, I did not act this time, and start thinking, I am someone who does not act. The difference seems small, but it is enormous. One speaks about behavior. The other speaks about who you believe you are. And when inaction becomes identity, each new opportunity already begins contaminated. Before even trying, you already expect to fail. Before even taking the first step, you already imagine that you will abandon it. And so the past begins to command the future. The fourth cost of inaction is that it distorts the perception of time. When we are young, or when an opportunity seems recent, we have the feeling that there will always be another chance. Tomorrow I start. Next month I solve it. Next year I change. Later I do it. Later I speak. Later I try. The problem is that later seems infinite while it is ahead, but seems brutally short when it is behind. Many important decisions do not disappear all at once. They become more difficult. The body changes. Energy changes. Responsibilities increase. People follow other paths. The market changes. Relationships cool down. Windows close. And maybe this is one of the most uncomfortable truths of life. Not every opportunity warns you when it is the last. Sometimes you think you are only postponing. But in practice, you are losing the moment. And when you realize it, that version of reality no longer exists. The person changed. The phase passed. The chance weakened. The context is no longer the same. Inaction creates the illusion that you are preserving options. But many times, while you wait for the perfect moment, your options are decreasing in silence. The fifth cost of inaction is that it feeds painful comparisons. There is a specific type of pain that appears when you see someone doing what you would like to have done. It is not exactly simple envy. It is a shock between what you wanted to be and what you avoided building. You see someone starting a business, improving the body, moving to another city, learning a skill, creating content, relating better, conquering something that you also wanted. And then that uncomfortable sensation appears. I could be there. The problem is not the conquest of the other person. The problem is the mirror that it creates. The life of the other person begins to reveal your own inaction. And that is where comparison becomes especially painful, because it does not show only that someone got farther. It shows that someone started. And, many times, the cruelest difference between who advances and who regrets is not talent, luck, or intelligence. It is the simple fact that one person endured the discomfort of starting, while the other stayed waiting to feel ready. This comparison can become bitterness. You begin to devalue the effort of others to protect your own ego. You think that the person had luck, that they had help, that it was easier for them. And sometimes this may even be true. But, deep down, there is a more intimate question. What would have happened if I had started when I thought about it for the first time? The sixth cost of inaction is that it transforms fear into regret. At the beginning, you do not act because you are afraid. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of looking ridiculous, fear of wasting time, fear of discovering that you are not as good as you imagined, fear of trying and not succeeding. But fear, when obeyed for too long, changes form. It stops being only fear and becomes regret. And regret is usually heavier because it carries a feeling of responsibility. When you fail while trying, you can still say, I did what I could. But when you do not even try, the mind is usually less merciful. It says, you did not even have courage. This does not mean that every avoided decision is wrong. There are moments when waiting is wisdom. There are risks that really are not worth it. There are opportunities that seem good, but are not. The problem is when waiting does not come from strategy, but from escape. When you call patience what, deep down, is fear disguised. And many people spend years doing this. They do not say, I am afraid. They say, I am still planning. They do not say, I do not want to expose myself. They say, I need to study more. They do not say, I am afraid of being rejected. They say it is not the moment. But life does not care about the beautiful names we give to our escape. Time keeps passing the same way. The seventh cost of inaction is that it lets small decisions become too big. One of the most common traps of the mind is to believe that big changes require big beginnings. So the person waits for the ideal moment, the perfect motivation, the complete plan, the scenario without risk. But while they wait, the task grows. Answering a difficult message today can be uncomfortable. After months, it can become an enormous weight. Starting to take care of the body today can be uncomfortable. After months, it can become an enormous weight. Starting to take care of the body today can be simple. After years, it can demand much more energy. Solving a conflict at the beginning can be difficult. After resentment accumulates, it can seem impossible. Inaction increases the emotional size of things. What could be a small step becomes a mountain. What could be a conversation becomes a trauma. What could be a test becomes an identity crisis. And the bigger something seems, the more the person avoids it. The more they avoid it, the bigger it becomes. It is a cycle. That is why, many times, the solution to get out of inaction is not to look for gigantic courage. It is to reduce the size of the first step. To do something so small that the brain cannot transform it into a threat. It is not writing an entire book. It is writing one page. It is not changing the whole life. It is organizing the next day. It is not defeating fear forever. It is acting once, even with fear. Because movement has a strength that imagination does not have. When you act, the mind stops creating abstract monsters and begins to deal with real data. The eighth cost of inaction is that it makes you confuse reflection with progress. Thinking is important. Planning is important. Analyzing consequences is important. But there is an invisible line where reflection stops being preparation and becomes a hiding place. The person reads about the subject, watches videos, researches methods, compares possibilities, makes plans, remakes plans, searches for the perfect strategy. And all of this gives a feeling of advancement. It seems like productivity. It seems like intelligence. It seems like maturity. But, in practice, nothing changes. This is one of the most sophisticated tricks of inaction. It can dress itself as preparation. The person does not feel stopped because they are thinking a lot. But thinking about a different life is not the same as building a different life. The mind loves the feeling of control that comes from planning. While everything is in the field of ideas, nothing can go wrong. The project is perfect. The conversation is perfect. The change is perfect. The future version of you is perfect. But in the real world, everything is imperfect. And it is exactly because of this that many people prefer to stay stuck in the mental phase. Because acting destroys the fantasy. Acting reveals limits. Acting shows where you really are. And this can hurt. But it is also the only path to improve. The ninth cost of inaction is that it moves you away from who you could become. Maybe this is one of the deepest points. Inaction does not steal only external results. It steals internal transformation. When you face something difficult, you do not gain only an achievement. You develop a new version of yourself. Someone stronger, more experienced, more realistic, more confident, more aware of your own limits and capacities. But when you avoid acting, you also avoid transforming yourself. The person you would be after trying never comes to exist. The person you would be after making mistakes and learning never forms. The person you would be after facing rejection, after starting that project, after changing that habit, after having that conversation, remains trapped in a possibility. And this explains why some regrets are so deep. It is not only, I lost an opportunity. It is, I lost a version of myself. With time, this type of regret can create a feeling of unlived life. On the outside, maybe everything seems normal. The person works, talks, smiles, fulfills obligations. But inside there is a feeling of distance between the life they have and the life they feel they could have built. And this distance can become a silent pain. The 10th cost of inaction is that it can teach you to live in spectator mode. This is the most dangerous cost because it happens slowly. The person begins by postponing one thing, then another, then one more, until, without realizing it, they start to observe their own life as if they were outside of it. They consume stories of other people, follow achievements of other people, comment on decisions of other people, criticize, admire, compare, imagine, but participate little in their own change. And the saddest thing is that, many times, this person is not incapable. They are not stupid. They are not weak. They are not without potential. They only train their own brain to wait too much, avoid too much, calculate too much, protect itself too much. But living in spectator mode has a high price. Because time does not pause while you decide if you are ready. Life keeps happening. People enter and leave. The body ages. The world changes. And what today seems only a postponed decision can, tomorrow, become a painful memory. The big question is not whether you are going to make mistakes. You will. Everyone makes mistakes. The big question is whether you prefer to carry some failures that taught something, or to carry years of doubts about what you never had the courage to try. Because, in the end, the deepest regret rarely comes from a life full of imperfect attempts. It usually comes from a life full of shelved desires. And maybe the most honest provocation is this. What are you calling prudence, but that deep down may be fear? What are you leaving for later, but know that you should start now? What conversation, decision, project, or change keeps returning to your mind because, deep down, you know that there is still something there? Inaction seems light in the present, but it can become heavy in the future. An action seems heavy in the present, but it can free you in the future. Maybe you do not need to solve your whole life today. Maybe you do not need to take a gigantic leap. Maybe you do not need to become a completely different person overnight. But maybe you need to stop negotiating with what you know matters. Because regret is born exactly in this space, between what you knew you needed to do and what you chose to keep postponing. And if this video made you think about some opportunity, decision, or change that has been stopped for too long, maybe this is the sign that your own mind was trying to show you. Now I want to ask you a question. What is the thing you are most afraid of regretting for not having done? Answer in the comments. Because maybe putting this into words is already the first step to stop running away. And if this content made sense to you, leave the like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notifications to receive more videos about psychology, human behavior, and the silent decisions that shape our life.